I work as a night shift security guard at a large hospital, and my job brings me into contact with all sorts of strange situations. My experiences can range from normal to moments that are harder to explain. I've gone many weeks without seeing or hearing anything unusual, but then there are periods when the activity around me picks up, making things feel much more intense. Lately, the activity seems to be happening more often and is becoming clearer and harder to ignore. I don't know if it's just in my head or if something real is going on. It could be nothing or it could be something. I guess it could go either way. My shift started like any other night over the weekend. There was a patient in the hospital, but they were discharged just after 6 p.m. By 7 p.m., all the nurses had clocked out, so I was the only one left in the building. It's pretty quiet here at night. I'm also a college student, so I was sitting at my desk doing some homework to pass the time. Then, around 8:30 p.m., my phone rang. Usually when they ring, no one is on the other end. The calls are always silent, but this time was different. When I picked up the phone, I heard static, but through it I could make out a woman's voice. I answered like I normally would, expecting the usual silence, but hearing a voice was unexpected, so it threw me off. The voice was faint, but I could tell it was there. The woman said she was locked in the waiting room and couldn't get out. This sometimes happens with the cleaning crew because when someone enters the waiting room, the doors lock automatically behind them. There are 2 waiting rooms in the hospital, one where I usually work, which is close to my desk, and another one at the opposite end of the building. Feeling concerned, I grabbed my keys and hurried over to let her out. But when I reached the waiting room, it was empty, and there was no sign of her. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and tried to focus on my schoolwork. I didn't think it was worth returning the call since I hadn't seen anyone, and it's hard to miss someone in the waiting room. Then, about 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was the same voice as before, and they said they were still stuck in the waiting room. I felt a mix of concern and confusion, so I asked them where exactly they were. I wanted to understand why they hadn't gotten out yet and how they could still be locked in. They said they were in the waiting room by the parking lot, which is one of the 2 waiting rooms. So I went back to check again, but once more I didn't see anyone. I turned around and glanced at the security monitor for that room. The screen showed nothing but a still image. Nothing was moving to trigger the camera. Sure enough, about 15 to 20 minutes later, I got another phone call. This time, they asked why I hadn't let them out of the waiting room yet. They were talking through static, and the woman on the other end said she was just visiting her son. I'm not sure why I hadn't thought of it before, but we didn't have any patients after around 6 p.m. The only patient we had, who was discharged, was an elderly woman, and I realized this woman didn't match that description at all. I felt a chill run down my spine as I thought about what this could mean. Feeling frustrated, I said, "Look, lady, there are 2 waiting rooms you could be in. I'm in one of them, and you're not in the other one." After I said that, I heard a light giggle, and then the phone went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, trying to process what just happened. I checked the call history and attempted to call back all the numbers, but they were all inactive. I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was going on, and I couldn't understand who or what I was really talking to. I know there are phone apps that can clone numbers, so I'm not ruling out the possibility that this was a prank by someone trying to mess with me. I can't tell if what happened was paranormal or not, but if it was, it didn't seem like any of the entities I know about. I'm a skeptic myself and always try to consider other possibilities. Still, this situation will be added to the list of things I'm not entirely sure about. I once matched this girl that I'm still friends with on Tinder, named Francesca. One of her pictures was taken on the rooftop of this cool-looking building with a sick view. I asked her where it was, and she told me it was some abandoned hospital on the edge of town that's super cool to explore at night and super easy to get into. There's usually one cop patrolling the huge parking lot at night to deter trespassers, but she said it was super easy to circumvent. She came up with the idea of us going there together as our first date of sorts, if you want to use the word date. I was totally on board with it. She seemed cool, and it seemed like a cool, different kind of way to meet someone as opposed to the usual, let's get drinks. I picked her up from her house 10 minutes away, then we drove the 20 minutes to get to the hospital. Those 20 minutes gave us a nice chance to get to know each other a bit and get comfortable with each other's personalities for a little while. When we got to the hospital, she told me to park on this dead-end street, hidden by a bunch of tall bushes, which was a 5-minute walk to the inside of the hospital. We hopped this little barrier separating the road from the hospital parking lot, and then we jogged across the wide open lot towards the grass, right next to the entrance she said she always used. She led us to this broken window to the basement of the hospital. It seemed kinda creepy, but I signed up for this. I was glad I wore raggy jeans like she told me to because I knew I was going to rip them on something. We used our phone flashlights. We didn't bring any special heavy-duty lights or anything. She seemed to know this whole hospital like the back of her hand. She led us to the stairway to the upstairs. I gotta say, being alone with one other person in a place like this at night was very scary, but I had no idea how scary it was about to get. On the first floor, Francesca kept talking so loud, I was paranoid we'd be found out because of her voice. Down the corridor we were in, it sounded like a door was opening or closing. Something echoed down the corridor to us. She heard it too and went silent. I asked her in a whisper, "Is it normal for others to be here?" And she said, "Sometimes, but not really." We turned off our flashlights and waited. Suddenly there was a bang much closer to us now. We both scrambled in the dark. I followed her, barely able to see. We made it back to the stairway and ran up the stairs with our lights back on. When we were a couple levels higher, we felt it was okay to speak at a normal volume again. Francesca told me the police never come in here, so it may have been other explorers. But the weird thing was there was no sign of another light in that corridor. Nobody normal would be walking in the dark. Then we heard sounds echoing from the exit stair shaft, where we just were. Someone was coming up the stairs. Once again, we scrambled. She led the way, saying she knew where to go. We ran for a few minutes through this maze of a building. I was truly freaking out. It seemed like we were being followed, and I wasn't sure if I would rather have it been the cops or someone else. She led us to this mini outside spot. We weren't on the highest rooftop, but I guess we were on what you'd call the rooftop of this level. We stopped to catch our breath. The whole being followed thing was killing the vibe completely. Even she seemed concerned, and I looked to her as the expert with this place. After a few minutes, we relaxed a bit and went through this broken window into the ceiling of this one large room. This part was scary because she wanted to walk along these long, narrow wooden planks with a 10-foot drop below us. A fall from this height would cause injury, but I didn't want to seem like a coward. I followed her across the sketchy, long wooden board until we got to the top of this pillar, where one board stopped and another one started. We sat on this pillar to just chill and talk, with our legs dangling over the edge, overlooking the darkness below. It was creepy in there, and I thought we were all alone, until there was a sound from below us. It sounded like someone walking. Our presence was already made known to whoever was in there, so we turned on our flashlights and aimed them down below. And right below us, standing at the pillar, looking up at us, there was this 40-something-year-old man in a black Carhartt beanie, wearing a black jacket and black sweatpants. He smiled at us and said in this creepy, deep voice, "Come on down," as he was waving us to come down. I asked, "Are you police?" He disregarded my question as if he didn't hear me and repeated, "Come on down," with his creepy smile. Francesca and I got up scared and started walking back across the narrow piece of wood. I was even more scared of falling now than before. I had no idea what that man would do to us. As we were about halfway across, the man hurried out of the room below us through a door. He was most definitely going to try to catch us. We had to hurry. We made it across and tried to get out of there, knowing that man was dangerous. As we were running down the stairs in the shaft on the opposite side of the hospital, we heard the door a few flights above us open and slam shut, and then footsteps stomping down the steps. He somehow had followed us. We were hauling ass as if we were running for our lives. We made it back to the first floor and ran back to the opposite side of the hospital where we entered from. We went back to the basement and climbed through the broken window. The whole process of climbing through that window was haunting because I went out second, and I was afraid my legs would be grabbed at any moment. But I think by that point, we lost the man. We ran back across the parking lot, back to my car, and when we made it, the first thing we did was lock the doors and catch our breath again. That was a complete nightmare, and somehow, us getting through it together created a sort of instant bond between us. We drove away from there and stopped at a Wendy's to get food and just collect our thoughts in the car. We chilled for an hour just talking, and then I dropped her off. Francesca and I have stayed in contact through the years, and while we were romantically involved for a few months, we ended up just staying good friends. Neither of us ever returned to that hospital again. I'm a young doctor working in a urology clinic. I see this guy in his 50s. There was just something off about him, something slimy. Anyway, I didn't think much of it and just did my job. His main complaint was erectile dysfunction. I'm new and inexperienced, so I help him thoroughly, maybe even a bit too thoroughly. This included extensive questioning about his sex life, a physical examination of external genitalia, a digital rectal exam, and blood work, the whole 9 yards. I always try to make my patients feel comfortable. It's not always easy for an older guy to talk about his junk to a stranger, so I make an effort to chat, crack a few jokes, and make them feel special. So I do this with him as well. I prescribe him a PDE5I, Viagra-type medication, and give him a follow-up date to discuss the results of his blood work. Skip to 2 weeks later. I'm in the clinic again, and I pull out the file of this guy. Let's call him Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith comes into my consultation room and sits next to me. The room is spaced in such a way that I'm behind the table, but his chair is right next to mine, on the same side. I know, right? Public hospitals. He scoots his stool close to mine, sits facing me with his legs wide apart and starts, "You know, doctor, I'm so glad you got my file today. I missed you. How are you?" I respond, "Mr. Smith, how are you?" But he ignores my question. "You know, I'm glad it's you. Because that other doctor working here, I think he's one of those gays, and we don't like gays, do we, doctor?" Then he touches my leg. "Do we, doctor?" I didn't really know what to make of it, so I took his hand off my leg and continued, "Mr. Smith, are those tablets working for you?" Then he giggles. "Wouldn't you like to know? You know, I love how personal you get with me. I even got a funny clip on my phone the other day that reminded me of us, and I promised myself I'd show it to you." He takes out his phone and starts scrolling through his clips. "Oh, this isn't the one, but it's funny too." He holds the phone eagerly to my face. It's a clip of a guy drawing a palm tree, but as he keeps drawing, it turns into a penis, with the coconuts as the testicles and the palm leaves as the pubic hair. Just juvenile stuff. I say, "Mr. Smith, please, let's get on with it." "No, doctor, please, just this one clip. You were so friendly last time. I like you too," he replies, scrolling further. Then his eyes light up. "Oh, here it is, doctor. This is the one. Very funny. It reminds me so much of us." He holds the phone to my face again, and the clip starts with a huge white man, just standing there, naked. I think, okay, maybe this is still supposed to be funny. You hear a door open, and in walks another massive man, dressed as a doctor. "So you're the patient?" the doctor says. "Yes, doctor," the naked man answers. "Lie down," the doctor says. The naked man lies down, and I'm still waiting for the punchline. Then the doctor starts examining the naked man, and he accidentally touches his crotch. At that moment, something feels horribly wrong. I glance at Mr. Smith, and he's eagerly holding the phone up, not looking at the video but at me, smiling, almost giddy, with childlike excitement in his eyes. "Mr. Smith, why would you think I'd want to see this?" I ask. "No, just keep watching. It gets better," he insists. He was showing me gay porn. I rushed to end the consultation and dismissed Mr. Smith. After that, I got up, walked out of the clinic, and went to the helicopter landing pad on the other side of the hospital. I freaked out. I thought, no, I'm overreacting. I'm just taking it so badly because I was molested as a child. It was just a pass he made. Anybody can make a pass at anybody, right? It's normal. I kept saying these things to myself as I stood there, sobbing like a 6-year-old boy. After I pulled myself together, I went to the trauma unit next to the landing pad. I told the story to the doctors on call there as a joke, like it was just a funny anecdote. But nobody laughed. They looked horrified. They kept asking if I was okay and if they could maybe make me some coffee or something. That's the only reason I knew what had happened to me was unacceptable. How messed up is that? Mr. Smith came a few more times after that, but I made a point of never taking his file. Screw him. Apparently I blocked the whole thing out. Until the other day, when I wrote the previous story. Just to clarify, I don't have a problem with homosexuality or even gay porn, but I do feel that it's okay for me not to want to look at it.